family of 7. I had incredible parents. I was born a stutterer, just like my dad. And so that caused a lot of anxiety for me. You know, wanting to raise my hand in class, but not wanting to because I couldn't get the word out. Walking across town because I didn't want to call somebody, just those little things. And so I knew that there were certain things in life that were just not going to be possible for me. And I continually told myself what those things were. They were anything to do with talking in front of people, trying to sell something, yes, and being in the spotlight at all. I spent my life trying to avoid that. And I got married to my wife because she was the aggressor. I didn't know what was going on at first. I did not date, I did not dance, I tried to avoid any type of social activities whatsoever. And she offered to help me well, okay, I'll tell this part of the story because this is kind of funny too. She called me to ask me out and I said, oh, I have to babysit my niece. And she said, oh, I love babysitting. And I had something I could have gone to that night with my buddies. And so I said, really? Because I was hoping to go to this with my friends. Long, awkward pause. And then I said, oh, did you mean with me? She said, yeah, I was kind of thinking with you. Oh, yes, of course, yes. That sounds great. I was still clueless. But she stayed with it, fortunately. And only 5 months after we got married, I started to get sick. All kinds of different things going on. And it turns out it was some parasites that I had gotten on a church mission that I served down in Brazil 2 years prior. And there's these certain parasites that come in dormant and then they wake up later. It was causing me all kinds of problems, and my mom found a tropical disease specialist at the University of Utah Hospital, which was a 6-hour drive from our home. And so I said goodbye to Shalane. She had to stay for her job, and I was going there for a 3-day treatment. And I went all the way to the hospital, and I checked in, and the nurse checked me in on the first floor on just one of these little rooms with the curtains, you know, and then she came back to get me, and she said, oh, Derek, we're going to move you up to the 5th floor. Walked me up to the 5th floor, brought me into this corner suite with a view, nice big room. And I said, wow, thank you for the upgrade. She said, oh yeah, people with your type of leukemia always get their own rooms. I said, what? She said, oh yeah, you have acute myeloma. Ooh, that's the bad kind. And I see that they want to start chemotherapy tomorrow. And I said, no. I'm the parasite guy. Check your charts again. And she did. She verified my name and my date of birth and all that. And I still was convinced that it was some kind of mix-up. And then she asked me some more questions, and she looked down at the chart, and she looked at me, and she looked at the chart again, and then I saw that she recognized what she had done. Oh, you just got here today, huh? Yeah, just a second, I'll be right back. Left. I was sitting in the room all by myself going, I mean, that's impossible, clearly. I mean, I have parasite, I don't have leukemia. After about 30 minutes, this train of doctors came into my room. And then I thought, maybe they know something I don't. And they confirmed that I had leukemia and that I was fortunate to be there at the timing that I was, and they found it because of the other treatment that I was going to get. So I had both, yes. And I called Shalane and told her, and that was obviously a moment that changed our lives forever. Now we can look back and see it really, truly as one of the best things that happened to our marriage and to us and to our family. We both wanted to know, of course, what that would mean to the possibilities of us having children, and the doctors said, well, we don't have any documented case of somebody getting this type of chemotherapy and having children. And I have 5 here on the boat that are the first documented cases. And so for this type of chemotherapy, it would get the chemotherapy, which, in case you don't know, I thought that chemotherapy was going into like a huge microwave oven and the lights are going to come out, you know, and just cook the, but no, it's really just a controlled bag of poison. And they hang it on the pole there, and it drips in me for 6 days. While it's coming in, I felt relatively fine, but it's the 3 weeks afterwards where they have to take you to the brink of death to try to basically kill all the cells in your body, hoping that the cancer cells also don't come back with it. And so it did. It killed every cell. And in fact, on my toenails, I have a line of dead for each round of chemotherapy that I had. And those are my little tokens. But it's in those moments that I learned some of my best lessons in life, and I made some of the best friends that I ever made, because I had to live in the hospital for 4 months and 1 day. I went through those treatments faster than they thought that I could, and it was because I was being so blessed. I made several friends, one of whom name was Greg Johnston. He was a cowboy from Vernal, Utah. And he came in there and he said, "Derek, I don't got time for this. I just like to get drunk and fight." And he said, and they usually happen in that order, actually. And I said, "Greg, well, you won't be doing either of those for a while here." And we became just the type of friends that you can form when you're in a foxhole together. And our nurses, he was in room 522 and I was in room 521. And we would spend a lot of time together. And this was during the fall, so it was football season, and our nurses would track our calories, and we'd be at like 500 calories for the whole week. And then it was Monday Night Football, and we would consume Taco Bell and nachos, and chips and salsa, and mint Mentos, about 3,000 calories worth. And the nurses would gather around. "I don't understand. Look at this. He's on his 6th taco." We couldn't explain it either. But those were the nights where we formed a friendship and a bond, that I won't ever forget. And all the things that were going right for my treatments, they went wrong for him. He had a brain aneurysm and a stroke. And he was always going down to the ICU, and he would come back and he would always joke with me about what had happened. And there was one time that somebody else came into his room. And so I had to go meet this person. And I chatted with him, and his name was also Greg. And we chatted for about half an hour. And I left the room, and a nurse said, "He doesn't look very good, does he, Derek?" And I said, "What?" And she said, "That's Greg." And I had just chatted with my friend for half an hour, and I didn't recognize him because he was emaciated and just a shell of himself. And I went back in and I said, "Greg, what the heck were you doing?" He's like, "I thought you were having some kind of problems with your treatments." He said, "I don't want you to feel bad. You were asking me all this stuff that you already know about me." And that was one of the times that he said, "Derek, you know I'm not going to make it, don't you?" And I said, "No." There's a guilt that comes over a person who is surviving that is real. And I would always feel bad when I was doing well and he wasn't. And he would tell me about probably the biggest regret of his life, that he had caused an accident when his girlfriend was pregnant with their daughter, and so he was not able to keep the child, and he wanted his daughter to know how he felt about her, and he would ask me to find her for him, and then he would say, "And you, Derek, are going to live for us both, and you're going to do something great." And I remember every time when he would say that, how I felt. I would immediately think about the fact that I stuttered, and I would say, "Well, I can't really do something great." And so I would just try to change the subject. And then after 4 months, I went home. And that first month home was glorious. It's like you can re-experience life and the small things for the first time. You could feel the wind in my face. I could eat a hamburger without feeling nauseous. So many of those simple pleasures, I just thoroughly enjoyed them for that month. But I was constantly thinking about Greg and how he was doing. I went back to the hospital for my first checkup after 30 days, and I went into the clinic to get my blood drawn, and I broke out in these hives from head to toe, these little bumpy red hives. And my doctor came in, I said, "Dr. Glenn, what's happening to me?" And she said, "Oh, yeah, I think that's just your body not wanting to be back here." And there wasn't any medical reason for it, I didn't want to be back there. Because there was a recognition for being back on that floor that went deep into the subconscious. I could still go back to that place, which is not that place where they treat cancer anymore, because now, if you know Utah, there's a Huntsman Cancer Institute that they built, which is one of the finest. But I can go back to those particular rooms and close my eyes, and just all the memories can come back. From the smells, from the smell of the sheets, I can hear the jingle of the food cart. And I can just have so many memories coming back. And so I was back there. Greg was not there. He was down in the ICU. And I went down there and I got into all the smocks, and his dad was there, so I knew that it was serious, that it was close to the end. And I got down next to his bedside, and I grabbed his hand and I said, "Greg," because I was feeling really guilty about the month that I had just had. I said, "Greg, please, can you make it up to the floor one more time?" And he squeezed back stronger than I thought he would. And he said, "Derek, it's all right. It's all right." He said, "But you haven't promised me yet. You're going to do something great, right?" And I said, "Yes, I will." And I immediately felt even more guilt, because I felt extremely limited in what I could do. I had already decided that I was going to be a computer programmer, because come to find out later, when I went to some of my stuttering clinics, that's the most common profession that we choose. It's just you and the code and the monitor, no people. And you know, this was the days before cell phones, and so I would truly just get in the zone. I would put the headphones on, I would just be hearing the Enya and writing code all day, and I'd be, "Oh, it's time to go home." And I settled into life, and we had children, of course, and I had two joys in life. It was my family, and it was basketball. And I was playing all kinds of City League basketball and stuff. And in fact, I got a job in part because I could play basketball. They asked a lot about that during the interview process. I didn't know the type of coding that they did there, but they weren't too concerned about that, because they had a team at this company. And we would go and play and have a practice every day for 2 hours during lunch. And so I thought that was the greatest job ever, because it just brought everything that I loved into one place there. And it was during one of those lunches where God helped me remember the promise that I had made. And I was playing against my boss, who was really good, and he got me to jump up in the air, and I jumped and I came down, and my head hit the top of his head, just perfect, boom. And I was concerned about him, and I was checking on him, and he turned and his eyes got huge, and he said, "Guys, grab him." And they put me into it like a human straitjacket, and they lowered me to the ground. And I was like, "What's going on?" And they said, "Don't move. You broke your eye socket." And I said, "What?" And I got him off me, and I went to feel my face. And there's a sensation, of course, like if I were to step off this stage and not know that the step is there, you know, that type of sensation. I had that when I touched my face, where my face was supposed to be. It went back like 2 inches, and it felt kind of squishy. And I did it again, and I did it and I did it 3 times. And then I said, "Guys, what happened to me?" And they said, "You broke your eye socket. Don't move." And I got up and I stood up, and they were all kind of concerned, but not enough to come near me. They were like, oh. They said, just go back down because we called an ambulance. And the first thing I thought of was the cost of that ambulance. I said, no. You, Dennis, you can take me to the hospital. And so he's like, okay. And he walked like 8 steps behind me, and I was walking out. Of course, all the other 8, they were like, well, I guess it's game on. They just played. I walked past all the women on the cardio machines, and that's when I knew it was bad. Because they were like, And I walked past, and I finally got to his car, and I pulled down the mirror. And then it started to hurt really bad. Because what had happened is right here, of course, you have the orbital bones, and this is the sinus cavity, which is hollow. So those bones shattered as well as the orbital bones. So my eye socket did fall down, but what was worse was this is hollow in here, so it just shattered. So it looked like it was this huge dent into my brain, right? Fortunately, it hadn't done any damage to my brain. But Dennis drove me to the hospital, which was the University of Utah Hospital, the same place where I had spent all that time. But I was just going to the ER. So all this is exactly how it happened. True, because I won't ever forget. He pulls me up, and he's like, so you good then? I'm like, yeah, Dennis, there's no need for you to park. And I walk into the ER by myself. And there's one guy with his arm in a sling up at the front. And he sees me and he's like, and I go up, but the girl at the counter, she didn't actually look up. She's like, put your name here, we're gonna do, oh heavens. She goes, just a second. She ran in the back and I heard her say, doctor, please come out here, there's a man, he looks like he got hit in the face with a hammer. And I heard the doctor say, we'll check him in. He came in on his own, right? And she said, yeah, but please. And the doctor looked around the wall and his eyes flinched for just a second. And he said, well, he's okay, just, check him in. So she went through the whole thing, the triage, get my insurance information, but she couldn't abide to actually look at me. She was like, and she was checking, and they got me back on the gurney. They were giving me lots of attention, hooked me up to some morphine. Have you ever had that? That button? It's the button of power. But it only works every 10 minutes. They let you push it all you want. It's not working anymore. But then 2 skiing accidents, trauma 1, came in, and they were dying. So they could not give me any attention for 4 hours. I kept pushing the call button. Mr. Maxfield, we know you are hurting. These people are dying. And finally I said, how do you know I'm not dying? Because I was starting to think, because at this point I had turned into like the elephant man. My face was swollen, huge. See, touching it, it was way out here now. So I'm like, oh, what happened? And I thought maybe I am bleeding or something. And so anyway, finally they got me back for the scan. And this is exactly what happened. The doctor came in and he said, well, you broke your face. Fortunately, it's only cosmetic, and we have a really good surgeon right here on staff that can fix it for you. But there's way too much swelling. Come back on Wednesday. So it was Friday, and I walked out the way I walked in, and went to church on Sunday. And I always had this joke with my wife Shalane that I wanted to get a black eye, and she would always be like, Derek, you're never gonna get in a fight. You're never gonna get a black eye. And I came home and I said, huh? And she's like, that's a black face. And it was yellow and purple streaks, and it was beautiful. And went to work on Monday and Tuesday just so I wouldn't have to use my time off, because my boss would see me and be like, oh, go home. So I drove myself to the hospital for my surgery. Went in there, and the doctor said, well, your damage appears to be fairly extensive, but I think we can of course do it, but I might need to open you up. And he said, should I need to do that, of course this is a student hospital, can we have a student help with the incision? And I said, well, what do you mean open me up? And he said, well, we're gonna go in with a couple instruments right here on your forehead, try to put it together, but if we have to, we're gonna have to open you up and get access to the area. I said, well, can you explain exactly what that means? He says, yeah, well, it's fairly simple. We just cut you from ear to ear, peel your face right off. And he said, and I wanted details. He said, well, it's kind of like a fillet knife if you've ever fished. And that's what they did. And they ran out of the little special titanium screws during the surgery, so they had to go get more. So it took 5.5 hours, but they put me back together again. I have 7 plates and 28 screws right here in this part of my face here. It does not set off the metal detectors. And it was perfect until 3 days after the surgery. I went home and I was tickling my daughter on the ground and her head came up. And I heard the crackle. So if you see this dent right here, somewhere there is a doctor who wants you to know that that was not his handiwork. No, I'm serious. I went back in and he goes, oh, I have to open you back up again. I said, no. He said, well, people are gonna know. That is obvious. And I said, no, I'll keep it. So this little dent I have right here, he did not do. But this story is coming to a climax here in a second, I promise. After the surgery, they put me into room 522 for my post-op recovery. And during my 4 months of being there and seeing patient after patient, those were our little special 12 rooms where they treated us cancer patients. And I had never heard of them putting a post-op patient into one of those rooms. So I think Greg probably had something to do with that. I was in his room, and I was waking up. And you know that feeling when you're coming out of the anesthesia and you're beginning to be aware of your surroundings, but you can't really open your eyes yet. I was in that stage, and immediately I knew exactly where I was. I could smell it. I heard the nurses, and it was all too familiar. I knew exactly where I was, but I didn't yet know why or how. So there was like 20 seconds there where I was trying to process it. And I was like, I'm back here. I'm back. And then I grabbed hold of the thought that I had a daughter, and I knew I didn't have a daughter when I was getting my treatments. And that's when, for me, I had a life-changing moment where the thought came upon me very strongly, exactly, Derek, you're right back here. And you're still using the same excuses. You are holding yourself back because your speech isn't perfect. That's all it takes for you to not to fulfill the promises that you made to God and to Greg. And I felt embarrassed of myself, that I had forgotten how determined I was to do something. And it wasn't that my life was a mess or that I was doing the wrong things, but I wasn't exerting myself to do something special and to try to make a difference. And so I told myself that morning, all before my eyes were even open, because then I remembered where I was and why I was there. And I said, all right, this time when I leave this hospital, I don't care if I stutter in front of the whole world. If I have to make a fool of myself, I'm going to at least give it my all. I'm going to do everything that I can. And for the next 2 years, that was a period of my life when I was able to maintain a certain level of diligence that was tied to that feeling And I kept myself accountable by I would get up every morning at 4:45 and I would write in my journal. And I would simply write what I was going to do that day. And I worked on some software because for me, the catalyst to being able to do anything was tied to money and a scarcity complex that I had. So I had to do something that was going to make money and to, and to get me out of the cycle that I felt like I was in. So I worked on that software for 2 years, and I got to the point where I could launch that in 2004, and I started a business, and that was the software company Next Steps that I sold in 2010. And I wanted that to be the great thing that I had done. But as much as we had helped companies with their software, all I had done was really financially set up my family for the rest of our lives. And I felt good about that, but I hadn't done something that I felt like I had really made a difference. And it was only about 6 months after that, and I was driving in a car and I was talking to Shalane about this topic of children that have children that have been sexually abused by somebody that they know, and how it's such a hush-hush topic and it's taboo. And I was telling her, why doesn't somebody do something about that? Like, why doesn't somebody speak out against that? And that was the moment that also changed my life. And I thought, exactly, why doesn't somebody? And for my software career, I had been around a lot of successful direct sales companies. And so, as crazy as it sounds, I had never considered starting one of my own. In that moment, I decided. It was like I could start a party company that could be so successful that it could fund a foundation that we could make a difference. And that's something that I knew would get the approval of Greg and of God, and of something that I could feel proud of. And so that's where it all started. And all of you here today, I owe you so much gratitude and thanks for helping that actually happen. It happened so much faster than I thought it would. I was ready for it to take 7 to 10 years, and that's what I was going to do. But it didn't. And it didn't because that is a cause that is needed now. And there are 11 women that are at a retreat right now. And it's because of what you have done. And so that's when I say I'm thankful for what you've done. I truly am. I didn't need, for myself, I didn't need the money. I didn't need the company to be successful for the money, but I needed it to be successful for that cause. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart for helping it happen so much faster, and for all of you being here. And so that's my story. Thank you.